Some of you may have heard of this, but the Chicago Teachers Union, which represents 30,000 Chicago educators, is part of a broad coalition of unions, community, and faith organizations that are calling for May 1st, International Workers' Day, to be a national day of shutdown under the banner of no school, no work, no shopping. In effect, to be, again, a shutdown in response to the crimes of the Trump administration. CTU, the Chicago Teachers Union, and the many organizations that have been supporting this call this morning successfully pressured the Chicago public school system to declare May 1st a civic day of action, meaning that there will be no retaliation to any students or educators participating in the day's activities. There's going to be a big rally in Chicago. And as part of the agreement that CTU is able to achieve, the Chicago public school system will actually be providing buses for students and teachers to go to this massive rally in Chicago. Breakthrough News' Amanda Yee was able to speak to the CTU president, Stacy Davis Gates, to hear about why they are calling for the May 1st shutdown, the impact of Trump's policies on Chicago students, and the centrality of Chicago in pushing the labor movement forward. So let's hear that interview right now.
Stacy, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Well, it's great to have you. We can get right into it. As I said before, the Chicago Teachers Union has called for a citywide shutdown on May Day. So can you talk a little bit about the importance of this demonstration? And given the historic role that Chicago has played in May Day, what message are you trying to send?
Well, we like to say that Chicago is the birthplace of the labor movement. In fact, we, as members of the Chicago Teachers Union, have been in on some monumental organizing over time. Our motto is we like to bend the arc of the arc. And by doing so, we are organizing not just our members, but our entire school district to this idea of solidarity, that we have to find a place of common ground to create the popular front that's going to be necessary to protect our neighbors, to support our neighbors, and to withstand this moment together. It is mutual aid and it is mobilization.
Mm. So this call for a shutdown comes as a direct response to Trump's slashing of social programs like SNAP and Medicaid, while also funneling billions of dollars into ICE and wars abroad. So how have you seen these aspects of Trump's agenda affecting those in Chicago, but especially students and their families?
Well, look, without rich people paying more money, all he's doing is transferring funding where people need it, and places like healthcare, and places like SNAP, and places like public education, and shifting it towards the war machine. Here in Chicago, how do we feel that? Well, we feel it in a dismantling of the special education services that our young people receive, and the guardrails that the Department of Education used to enforce. We are feeling it through families needing more. Before SNAP benefits are even turned off for millions of people and children and families, grocery bills have been astronomical. So we're dealing with hungry children now. We suspect that we will be dealing with even hungrier children. There is a direct relationship to the lack of social safety nets and wraparound supports that we have in our community, and how it impacts the young people in our community, women and children primarily. So those are the mothers we serve and the children we serve. To be perfectly honest with you, it is our duty as educators to provide a civic education, to create the capacity for our students to understand how this democracy is supposed to work and who the democracy is supposed to work for. It is we, the people. And we're using May Day as an opportunity to create the solidarity with the families we serve, to give the lesson citywide on we, the people.
Mm. And, Chicago has also seen an increase in ICE activity. I was wondering if you could speak a little bit to, how, the presence of ICE has affected your students and their families as well.
Well, it's terrorism, right? And Chicagoans have an understanding of what that means. My grandparents left the Jim Crow fascist South in hopes of a better, safer place. And all of them came to Chicago first. What does that mean? It means that there is a memory in the DNA of Chicagoans, which have enabled the resistance to Operation Midway. Our city has long been a refuge. As you know, I'm a history teacher, so I would be remiss to not tell you that it was Pullman porters, workers in Chicago that went to places like Sunflower County, Mississippi, with the Chicago Defender, telling them that there was sanctuary from that level of fascism. So our ability to withstand Operation Midway and do it collectively comes from a place of liberation that our people have already experienced. And so people have been able to operationalize that. We bargained sanctuary in our contract some years ago. And, those protections in our contract enabled our school district to develop the capacity of workers in our union and outside of our union to protect families, to protect children, to understand our rights. And boy, was that the infrastructure we needed with that deluge of violence.
Mm. Well, as you mentioned, you're a history teacher, along with being an organizer and a trade unionist and the president of CTU. As a history teacher, can you talk a little bit about how general strikes have been used by workers throughout U.S. history? Because that labor history is really, really repressed in the U.S., as you know.
Absolutely. But labor history is American history. It was enslaved Africans that left plantations to form what is perhaps the first most consequential general strike that this country has seen. Without my ancestors leaving those plantations, allied with white abolitionists, allied with women leading the movement, Black and white abolitionists, we may not have the United States of America that we have now. When those enslaved Africans left the plantation, they crippled the Confederacy's ability to sustain its aggression, and thereby breaking the back. But it's the benefit of that general strike and that sacrifice. We get the Freedmen's Bureau, where public education is birthed. We get the first DEI program, and that you get white women who are teaching children in the South. You also get the 13th Amendment, the 14th Amendment, and the 15th Amendment. You get this opportunity to see both people benefit from a struggle that were not primary to the struggle, DEI. And you also see the expansion of democracy and civil rights and civil liberties for everyone, right? That forms the basis for that due process. Birthright citizenship is coming up again for good reason. These are the gains that enabled a greater, more inclusive United States of America. So what I am saying is that it was enabled by workers.
Mm. As-
Abraham Lincoln, his Emancipation Proclamation, it codified what was already done. Sorry, you got me on a history teacher run.
no, go ahead, please.
No,
um,
it's just like workers make it happen. Workers make it happen, and everything else follows.
Yeah, absolutely. Labor organizing, a key facet in gaining our rights as that we enjoy. And, that's a large reason why your union, the Chicago Teachers Union, has called for this National Day of Shutdown. But what is your message to other workers and trade unions across the country who maybe haven't, joined the call yet for a day of action on May 1st?
Listen, our union is too powerful to only do bread and butter. You have a union full of people who live and work. We are not just workers, we are parents. We are not just parents, we are siblings. We are not just siblings, we're queer. We are not just queer, we're transgender. We are not just transgender, we're Black, we're female, right? So, all of the things that are being contested in this moment, workers face. What if workers united on all of the things that are contesting? What if workers' rights also meant reproductive rights? What if workers' rights also meant civil rights? That is our work in this moment as organizers and as union leaders, is to show our union is more expansive than just bread and butter. You need bread and butter because it is sustaining. And there's so much more on that buffet than bread and butter.
Mm. So CTU is planning for this nationwide shutdown on May 1st. Can you tell us what will come after May Day, though?
Business as usual here in Chicago. We are enabled with May Day because our coalition and organizing work happens all ways. We believe that the only way in which you can be in a transformative, productive state is when you are allied with the communities in which you serve and other workers across labor in order to do that. So after May Day is over, we're building for Labor Day. And after Labor Day is over, we're building for the rich to pay their fair share. We're building for school funding that prioritizes smaller class sizes, that includes teacher retention, so we're not turning workers over. We are fighting for our country and this idea of democracy that's more expansive. We're going to follow the footsteps of enslaved Africans that made it better for everyone.
All right. Stacy Davis Gates, president of the Chicago Teachers Union. Thank you so much for joining the Freedom Side.
Thank you.